Hey, praise Lord, everyone. This is Elder Adrian Heyman giving us random thoughts once again. In this case, I'm going to bring forth something from the Bible first. And then I'm going to relate that to what's going on here. And with the Bible reference, I believe this is in 1 Samuel, whereas Samuel was the judge of Israel. But his sons weren't really doing what they were supposed to do. Let's leave it at that. The people came to him and said, "We want a king." And Samuel was very highly displeased. But the Lord told him to go ahead and grant them their wish, to anoint a king over them. But before he did that, Samuel gave some things to look out for as to what's going to happen once they have a king. Before that time, people pretty much lived on their own. They did whatever was right. And of course they did have, or whatever they thought was right. I'll put it that way. Every man did which they thought was right in their own eyes. That was from, I believe, the book of Judges. And it continued until Samuel's day. Although Samuel was a prophet, people respected him. And so because of that, there were a great many that did follow the Lord because of his example. But the people wanted a king like everyone else did. Everyone that they looked at, the Amorites, the Edomites, and the Moabites, and all the nations around them, they had kings. And they wanted a king for themselves. So Samuel said, okay, the Lord said, grant you your wish. But understand that you'll have young men, you'll take your young men for war, and they'll probably die in that war, or they could, but it was his prerogative to choose your young men. He was going to raise taxes on you, because of course you need to be able to run the government. They were going to take your young children or your young maidens and to serve in his court. In other words, the people were going to be subjected to some type of loss of freedom. And eventually, that's essentially what happened. One of the reasons why Israel broke up into two kingdoms was because they were taxed. They were taxed so very, very hard by Solomon, who was supposed to be the wisest of all, but his treatment of the people to fund all of his various projects became very onerous. And so because of that, the people did not agree with Solomon's son's approach, and they split. But the idea was that the seed was already sowed when the people said, we want a king. We want a king. So why am I going through this? Why am I talking about something that has happened close to 3,000 years ago? The reason why I bring it up is because what I'm looking at today, I'm not talking about Great Britain, I'm not talking about France, I'm not talking about Ukraine, I'm not talking about Russia, I'm not talking about China. Right now I'm focusing upon this country, because this country is where I live. This country is where I pledge allegiance to the flag and whatever. But I bring that because I can see the startings or the beginnings of what may become a virtual dictatorship. Now, understand that there's not as many dictators per se as we would think. Putin is not supposed to be a dictator. He's supposed to be elected, but we know necessarily what that means. He rigs the election, so he stays on forever and ever and ever. Same thing with China, same thing with plenty of other nations. And what I have seen over the last few months does concern me, because what happens is that this country, which was embedded in its constitution was a separation of powers. You have the legislative branch, which was to make laws, the executive branch, which was to enforce the laws, and the judicial branch, which was to interpret the law. Now, each of these have checks and balances on the other, so that one doesn't get above the other branch. But I've seen a lot of things over the last few months that it's beginning to really concern me regarding the freedom of not just of various peoples, but of all of us. The reason why I say this is because if you look at what's been taking place, I'm going to go over them piece by piece. First of all, you have a legislative branch that, even though one party does have the majority, it is hamstrung because the majority is not by that much. And you have to get all of these people together to vote according to what they wish. Now, some people will say, well, that's good because that means that we can pass laws according to what we want. And that's true. But there's another portion inside as well. And a lot of those that are of this particular party, they're afraid. They're really, really afraid. Some love what's going on, but there are some that are very afraid. Not only because they can be subjected to primaries that will vote them out of office if they don't do it a certain way, but the people to whom they are trying to govern are actually, and many times have put death threats upon them, upon their families, to do what they want to do. In other words, this is the essence of not necessarily mob rule, but you're afraid to do what you would like to do, so you pretty much vote the House way. That's pretty much what's been going on. So anything that the executive branch does, the legislative branch, which is supposed to make the laws, are very quiet. If you notice, they've been very quiet. Not that much in terms of passing laws on their own. Whereas the executive branch has been putting out edict after edict after edict after edict after edict after edict. And these are supposed to be laws that are now being pursued. But the executive branch is not supposed to be making the laws. They're supposed to be enforcing the laws that are there. But that's not what's happening. Built into this government also, there's supposed to be some safeguards other than the legislative branch. In terms of the various departments and various areas within the government that they oversee certain things as finance, consumer safety, fraud in business, wildlife, and the taking care of the land, and all these various things that we often don't think about, but there's someone that's been appointed or a group that's been appointed to watch over these things. But in this particular environment, whereas everyone wants to cut, and I understand because we cannot live the way we have been. We've been living half the hog, and the bill is about due. Got it. So we have to be somewhat accountable. But when you take away the agencies or strip them of their power to regulate rules in business, rules in finance, rules in the economy, rules in ecology, the various rules that essentially help to ensure that we don't fall prey to various schemes and bad business practices, and so we are laid waste while the rich 1 or 2% gather up all the money. All that's fine, but their power has been stripped. The people have been fired. It's melded into something else. So who's going to watch over the people? That's not happening, because no one's watching over the people. No one's watching over safety, consumer safety. Man, make sure that that defects that can potentially harm people are not propagated on the market and sold, and in a way that says let the buyer beware. That is what was going on during the late 19th, early 20th century. It was, you buy, it's your fault. If something goes wrong, it's on you. It's only been the policies that's been going on since that time that has been protecting consumers. But that protection is pretty much shot right now. Then you have those that are appointed as watchdogs. Those are the inspector generals. But you notice the inspector generals for most of these agencies have been fired. Why? Because they were not beholden to the executive, but they were supposed to be beholden to the country, to the people, to make sure that they watch over what agency that they are under or watching over for, and then being able to say, that's wrong, don't do that, we'll fine you, don't do that, okay, you can do that. But we have now a culture of loyalty to the executive and not to the country or the Constitution or the people, which can all be melded into one thing. So you have the inspector generals gone. Those that may be appointed afterwards are beholden to the executive. The legislative branch is essentially an arm of the executive. Now you get to the judicial branch, which essentially is hard for, they've been voting against this person time after time after time, and he's very angry. But when you begin to, because remember, the judicial branch interprets, but it doesn't have the clout to enforce anything. So if the part of the government that enforces does not obey the edicts or the decisions of the judicial branch really can't do anything about it. And the executive branch knows it. There is now more power given to them and less of a, oh, wait a minute, aren't you doing something wrong? That's not happening. So what's going on is that it's the executive branch is steadily gaining power, until a point that if it desires, it can do whatever it wants to do without fear of prosecution, without fear of being sued or anything. No repercussions whatsoever. But if this was an unpopular thing, then it may be protested, which some people are doing. But many people want this to happen. Why? Because they feel as if there are people that they want to deal with that should not be here. And so anything goes to get them out of here. And if you think I'm talking just about immigrants, I'm not. This is about anyone who is against the program that the executive branch shows. So the people that would normally raise up against this power grab, they're not there. But this has been warned. People have said this would happen. It's happened several times in history. It's happened with Putin. It's happened with Xi in Xi in China. It's happened with Bashar in Syria. It's happened with Mussolini in Italy. And of course, you know, this has happened with Hitler in Germany. Whereas there was a democratic process and there were warnings against what was coming up, but people did not listen. They didn't care because it wasn't it didn't affect them personally. But the problem is this, saints. As the people declared that they wanted a king, and they didn't realize the repercussions of having a king instead of letting God guide them. The same thing is here. We are getting to the point, or as the president is more than just the president, where he makes the laws, he interprets the laws, and therefore he enforces the laws, which means he can do whatever he wants to do. And if you think that it's not going to affect you, if he should at some time start looking against those who follow the Bible too closely, who if you are doing certain things that's not right according to the Word of God, now the Bible's too strict. And we forbid that from taking place. We say, well, isn't he a Christian? In name, but remember, by their fruits ye shall know them. And what fruits have been shown? I've seen a lot of cursing. I've seen a lot of being saying for the other nations to come and kiss his rear end. If that is supposed to be a Christian way of conversing, don't think so. But the key here, saints of God, is to watch. Watch. Do not be caught unawares. I'm not even talking about the rapture coming. We know it's going to come. We know all these things will have to befall, because he's talking about a worldwide allegiance to the Antichrist. And I'm not saying that Trump is the Antichrist or our executive president is the Antichrist. But you can see by what he's doing how the freedoms of certain people can be abridged. Piece by piece by piece by piece by piece. And you can also include the destruction of programs like DEI, the woke philosophy, so to speak, and demonizing those. So that there are people that have historically have not had due process in terms of the law. It's coming to that point again, because you're only going to hire or put in power those people who you feel most comfortable with. And it's not with people that have a tinge of melanin in it. I think you know what I'm talking about. But saints, you live according to what the Lord wants you to do. If this nation turns against the will of God completely, we got to hold on regardless. And for that, I'm going to also present in another session in the next few minutes what the different parties represent. I think you'll find that very interesting. So hold on for that. But for this one, God bless you. You take care. And again, these are just thoughts. You can say that you agree with them. You say that, yeah, that you can't, that you don't. It's not going to change for me calling you my brother or my sister in Christ. I love you all. You take care and keep watching, because we have to watch and pray. God bless you. Take care.